I want to talk about not the whole range of activities, because what Nicola said about the UK, I have to say, is even more true about the rest of the world. That there is a huge range and diversity of activities in so many countries, and I get bulletins twice a week about UPF activities around the world, and I can't keep up with them, and there's no way I could possibly present them to you here this morning. So I've had to be rather selective. And what I've felt, quite honestly, is to focus on one particular area, which I'll explain in a moment. But a lot of people have mentioned about, what are the basic principles of UPF, and I just thought I'd run through them quickly because, again, sorry to those who know them well already, but some of you may not. David had a very good personal take on these. I just wanted to, which are very consistent with these 5 principles, but I just wanted to remind you of officially the 5 principles upon which UPF operates, and which makes it, I think, such a strong organisation, because they are so all-embracing and so fundamental. The first, already touched upon, we are one human family under God. Various people mentioned about how important it is to feel, David in his presentation mentioned about feeling the other not as somebody different, but as part of my family. That's absolutely fundamental. Secondly, the highest human qualities are spiritual and moral. That was touched upon sort of incidentally. We understand that, of course, this physical realm is important, but we need to understand the deeper spiritual principles that underlie our physical existence. And therefore, we have to be truly balanced. We have to be cognizant of, take fully into account the physical, external, material realities of life, but we also have to very much bear in mind these deeper internal things that we sometimes tend to overlook. The spiritual is not validated by everybody these days. Thirdly, the family is the school of love and peace. Again, I don't need to say too much more about that because that's already been touched upon. This other principle, not specifically touched upon so far, living for the sake of others is the basis for social harmony. I think this is so fundamental. It goes together with the principle of being a family, because in the family you learn that if I'm there for my mum and dad, if I'm there for my brothers and sisters, things work. If I'm not, all hell breaks loose, basically. It's what happens in families. But as a principle that needs to be kept at the forefront of our minds in public life especially, I think this is very important. We really are not created, from our point of view, we're not created to be happy just for ourselves. We can't be happy just in ourselves. We can only be happy, we can only be fulfilled if we seek the fulfillment of the other and of others generally, in a sense more than my own fulfillment. This is very, very important. Again, one of Father Morgan's core teachings. And again, this principle of peace can only come about going beyond boundaries of ethnicity, religion and nationality. In today's world, differences should be irrelevant. They unfortunately tend to be relevant, and they become a stumbling block instead of a source of strength. Unity and diversity is really the key. And we need to really check ourselves always if we are adhering to that principle. Are we as embracing of others who are not part of my socioeconomic group, not part of my family, not of my nationality, not of my religion, not of my color, my race, my religion, whatever, as I am of all of those things. So, good to just touch base to those 5 core basic principles of UPF. What I really want to focus on, and I think this is peculiarly appropriate at this time, because we heard only 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, President Hollande said France is at war with ISIS in the Middle East, or wherever they are. Daesh, if you like, yeah. We know that, albeit that it's been sort of pushed off the front pages a bit by ISIS, Daesh, there is a war going on, a creeping war going on between Ukraine and Russia. We all remember about Crimea, how that was annexed, and we know that there's a creeping tendency on the part of Russian-backed forces to annex parts of Ukraine, and that's causing all kinds of instability and misery and suffering in that part of the world. There are many other instances, of course, in the Middle East, in Africa, but also, of course, in Afghanistan, and anyway, all over the world. Basically, there are either full-blown wars or regional or local conflicts that didn't ought to exist if we were, as we talked about, one family under God. So I want to talk about UPF's approach to peace building in theory, in principle, but also I want to touch on various places where we have been putting these things into practice, because just talking about peace, even coming up with very nice sounding theories is fine, but ultimately you have to translate them into action, you have to show that they work, you have to show results. And that also is very much what UPF is about. If we become just a talking shop, we're wasting our time and we're wasting everybody else's time. We have to actually bring, or start to bring, progressively bring tangible peace in situations where there are conflict. Then people will sit up and take notice. And it is happening, but of course from our point of view, from all of our points of view, too slowly. So it's all about building bridges of peace between divided communities. That could be a small community in the West Midlands of Britain, or any other small community around the world, or it could be between nations, blocks of nations, religions, Christianity, Islam, whatever. You choose the division, and then you apply these principles. And what UPF is about fundamentally, most fundamentally in my opinion, is finding people on either sides of conflicts who are rather different in their attitudes to other people than maybe the majority of people. I don't know, because I haven't met the majority of people, but it isn't always easy to find people who have these qualities. Imagine, let's take, for example, the Middle East. This perfectly describes the situation that exists between Arabs and Israelis in Israel-Palestine. You have actually there a physical war now, unfortunately. The physical war often comes where there's enough entrenched antagonism, fear, hatred, resentment, revenge, mistrust, conflict, misunderstanding, lack of communication. Where that exists for long enough and there's enough open conflict, then you tend to get a Berlin Wall, or you get now a Jerusalem War, whatever it's called, that divides parts of Israel and Palestine. And but it doesn't have to be a physical war, because very often, even without the physical war, there's enough of a mental, emotional, spiritual barrier between different peoples that there is, in effect, what we can call a wall between those two sides. And what we need to find, and what we fortunately have found to a great extent, and many of you people are, I'm sure all of you in some sense are those same kind of people, but whether you've worked on these particular projects or not, I'm not sure. But we want to find people on either side of a divide, whatever that divide is, who can see, of course everybody sees the wrongs of the other side. We're all good at that, we're extremely good at that. But not everybody can see the wrongs of their own side. We have to be absolutely balanced. What Father and Mother Moon always talk about is having a parental heart. God, we believe, is a parental God. God doesn't say, I like you but not you. God's mindset is, I want to save everybody. You're all my children. I want to embrace you all, and I want you to get on with each other. And therefore we have to be people, we have to find other people who see the wrongs of the other side, but also see the wrongs of their own side, and can take responsibility for that. And also, they can see the value of the other side, and the good things that the other side stands for, has done, whether to my group of people or other groups of people, or whatever, doesn't matter. And also, of course, and this is again one of the easy ones, along with seeing the wrongs of the other side, seeing the value of one's own side. So in other words, we're looking for people who have real balanced judgment, real parental, real embracing heart, to embrace everybody and not just themselves, their own group. And this is really very much the stuff of what we are trying to accomplish. Building bridges. What we do is, we find the people on, let's say this is the Israel side and that's the Palestine side on the right. We find people on both sides, and what do? We bring them together. Because we know, we all know, everybody knows that there's really divided communities. This also, of course, applied in Belfast, for example, notably in this country, still does to some extent. There is no communication going on. There is nobody challenging the stereotypes. There is nobody breaking down the barriers in terms of people's concepts of the other. And therefore, what you have to do, first of all, is to find people who can be the bridge. That's to say, the people on both sides who have these qualities that are noted on the left and on the right of the wall there, and then you bring them together, and then they are the first ones to reconcile. They're the first ones to see the value of the other, the first ones to say, I'm sorry for what my side did, and I really appreciate what your side did, instead of saying, you lot are all scum and we're the ones who really, the ones who should be appreciated. So we need to find people like that, bring them together, and then we find that gradually they create a bridge, because the ripples from what they feel, and there are some, I wish I had time to show you, there's a most beautiful video, one of the most beautiful videos I know is a video we made a few years ago in Israel, Palestine, where we have the religious leaders of both sides, the Islamic side, the Christian side, the Jewish side, and the other religions, the Druze and so on, and they all they all come together on camera, embracing each other with tears. Basically say, I'm sorry for what my community did, not just now, but in history, going way back. And the other saying the other side, and they become literally like brothers. When you see a prominent Islamic leader embracing a prominent Christian one or a prominent Jewish one, it's very, very moving. And if you get a chance to see that, I strongly recommend you do. I just don't have time. I've already been called time on this morning. So once they feel differently, and they can say, I know the other side don't think in a stereotypical way about us, that ripple spreads around their community, and more people want to go across, and more people become curious. Well, are the people on the other side of that wall not really that evil? You mean they're actually human like us? And then gradually, word gets around. Of course, this should be an ongoing process. In the Middle East, we've been working for, I don't know what it is now, 15, 20 years in this way, and it's still ongoing. But because the antagonism is so historical and so deep, it needs more of the bridge building than in most other places, I'm sure you can understand. So, I'm not going to go into in detail what we do there, but I just want to mention some good news on that front, because we've just had the last few days, actually, I can't give you so many photographs because they haven't come out yet, but we had about 30 people from all of these different parts of the divided community in Israel meeting at a very high level in Israel, very, very successful, discussing a resolution of the Israel-Palestinian conflict and going more deeply into how these principles would apply in the respective communities. I hope we'll have that in our next newsletter, which I'm sure you will get, and please look out for that. We had from here Lord Stone, noted person with Middle East expertise from the House of Lords, representing the UK, hosted in the Knesset by Hilik Bar, who's one of the Knesset members who's close to UPF. So that's ongoing, something to look out for. But another thing that's very interesting that's happened recently is that the Catholic Church has, in a very serious way, come to know about the work of UPF and come to validate the work of UPF. This is very important for us because we love the Catholics. We haven't always had the close relations with them. Partly, I'm sure it's our fault in some ways, the way we've dealt with relations with the Catholic Church. But anyway, about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, Tom Walsh, that's third from the left in the front row, who's our international president, was invited suddenly by the Pope to come to the Vatican and be part of his consultation about what to do about the Middle East. Because various prominent Catholics, and these are some of the most prominent Catholics in Europe, there's Romano Prodi, the former EU Commission President, there's Mohammed Al-Baradei, there's several cardinals there, there's... Anyway, this is a very prominent group. Tony Blair was supposed to be there, but he was at Prime Minister Sharon's funeral. He didn't come. But anyway, this is a really elite group of Catholic statesmen and thinkers and churchmen and so on. And on the left there you see Tom Walsh. And of all those 24 people there, Only 8 were selected to give a presentation, and Tom Walsh was one of the ones selected to give a presentation because of one of the conferences that we had in Jordan about the situation in Syria, how to solve the Syrian crisis. Pope Francis desperately wanted to have the Catholic Church be part of that solution. And this has been ongoing. It wasn't just a one-off, because when he was in America recently, I'm sure you all saw, there was a major interfaith service, and Tom Walsh again was invited to come meet the Pope and to be part of that service. And then actually most recently, I got this morning or yesterday a report about another meeting at the Vatican where we were represented, which was to celebrate 50 years since Vatican II. Before Vatican II, the Catholic Church was very closed to interfaith, but because of Pope Paul VI's attitude, the Vatican became very interfaith-minded. And we were prominently invited there. So these kind of things are going on behind the scenes. It's not something we shout about in public, but the interfaith approach of UPF is being heard at the very, very highest level, especially in the religious field. So do you want to stop there, Robin?
Yeah, stop there.
Stop now. So after lunch, I will be going on to explain about other international peace initiatives in Nepal briefly. I know we have someone else who's going to present about
Nepal
that.
man is here.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just going to touch on that one to him. But then also, I'm going to talk about in Europe, about the Balkans, what we're doing in the Balkans, because there's lots of legacy of tension and conflict from the conflagration of the 1990s. It still needs to be resolved. And also, I mentioned about Ukraine in my introduction. We are trying very strongly, have been for some years, to find peace and reconciliation between Europe and Russia. Not a lot of people are thinking about that at the moment because so much conflict-based the relationship, but all the more important for that we pursue commonalities between Eurasia, particularly Russia and Europe, and I'll explain about those after lunch.